In January 2023, three newspapers ran a story that should have killed the voluntary carbon market: The Guardian, Zeit, SourceMaterial. They found that more than 90% of the biggest rainforest carbon credits in the world were phantom. Gucci, Shell, BHP, Pearl Jam bought nothing. The CEO of Verra resigned that May. 3 years later, a six-person team in Wales used Hedera to issue the first soil carbon credits in U.S. history that were actually measured, not modeled. So, let's talk about DOVU, Hedera, and the audit layer most crypto people stop paying attention to. Okay, so let me set the scene. January 18th, 2023. The Guardian, Germany's Die Zeit, and a nonprofit called SourceMaterial drop a joint 9-month investigation. The finding was brutal. More than 90% of the biggest rainforest carbon credits issued by Verra, the world's largest registry, were likely worthless. No real carbon benefit, just paper. Right, and the academic backup was already there. A Cambridge study from 2022 had found that deforestation threats on Verra Red Plus projects were overstated by about 400% on average. Now look at the buyers: Gucci, Salesforce, BHP, Shell, EasyJet, Disney, Pearl Jam, even Leon, the salad chain, all buying credits that did not represent real avoided emissions. Verra CEO David Antonioli resigned that May, and the voluntary carbon market entered a credibility crisis it has not climbed out of. And the structural problem underneath is this: traditional registries are editable databases run by the registries themselves. Credits get double counted. Methodologies get backdated. So if the registry that issues the credit can also rewrite its own ledger, who exactly is auditing the auditor? So that question is exactly the gap Hedera Guardian was built to close. Guardian is an open source policy workflow engine, currently version 3.5.1. Quick nuance most creators are still getting wrong. Guardian used to be maintained by Envision Blockchain Solutions. In 2026, founders Daniel Norkin and Jason Pansis spun out into a new company called Climation, and Hashgraph itself is now the primary open source steward. Now look at who plugged into Guardian. Verra. Yes, the same Verra from the scandal, announced a 5-year partnership with the Hedera Foundation in May 2025. 20+ Verra methodologies are being digitized into verifiable credentials. The voluntary carbon market is projected at $35 billion by 2030, and Verra has cumulatively retired 1.3 billion tons. The largest registry on Earth chose Hedera as its rebuild rail. Then BCarbon, the soil carbon standard out of Rice University's Baker Institute, migrated more than 2 million existing credits onto Hedera in February. ServiceNow built its ESG public ledger on Guardian. Zimbabwe runs its sovereign carbon registry on Hedera through the UNDP. The state of Virginia runs its wetland mitigation banking on Guardian. And Totem Earth closed its first bundled Fortune 500 deal in May 2025. All of those names matter, but the live test case, the one with a real American farmer and a real soil sample, comes from a company most people have never heard of. Okay, DOVU, and the origin will surprise you. DOVU did not start as a carbon company. April 2017, Bristol. DOVU launched as a blockchain mobility data marketplace, backed by Jaguar Land Rover's InMotion Ventures. The original idea was drivers earning tokens for sharing vehicle data. Yeah, cars, not carbon. Then, October 30th, 2020, CTO Matt Smithies publishes a blog post titled Introducing Proof of Carbon on Hedera Hashgraph. The team had reframed carbon as a data integrity problem, the same mental model they were using for cars, just applied to dirt. Founder Irfon Watkins is a Welsh entrepreneur from Llanwrtyd Wells in Powys. Before DOVU, he ran Cool, a programmatic video ad tech company processing 15 billion ad requests a month. So, ad tech surveillance plumbing to carbon credit trust layer in one career. The team today is 6 people on LinkedIn, headquartered in Wales. 6 people running a $1 billion US carbon program by leveraging Hedera Guardian and BCarbon as outsourced verification rails. That is the shareworthy fact. The first proof point was Bolivia. DOVU's first verified nature-based project on Hedera mainnet was the Quechua Foundation in the Amazon basin. 1,108 verified credits from a 30-year undisturbed forest under pressure from sugarcane expansion. The DOVU token sits at Hedera token ID 0.0.3716059. 10 billion supply, no admin keys, so it cannot be reissued. 99% of holders who voted approved the migration from ERC20 to Hedera native in September 2023. So now meet the human. February 23, 2026. A farmer named Stuart in Greenbush, Minnesota, became the first American grower in U.S. history to receive third-party validated, soil-sampled carbon credits. Not modeled, not estimated, sampled. Real cores in the ground. Eag's quote was, quote, "This program returns real income to farmers. It rewards stewardship with measurable proof, not assumptions." End quote. The counterparty is Veterans Carbon Holdings, run by President Katie Lorenz and Chief Scientist Stephen Gorton. They signed a 9-year exclusive agreement with DOVU back in May 2025. The methodology is BCarbon Soil Carbon Protocol version 2.0. Stratified field sampling, direct soil cores, not satellite-only modeling. This is the deliberate response to the 2023 Verra scandal. Gorton said it on the record. Quote, "For years, carbon markets have relied heavily on modeling. We are replacing estimation with field-based verification and scientific rigor." End quote. Now the headline number. The program is projected at $1.1 billion over 9 years across 2.5 million acres, an estimated 41 million tons of CO2 over the contract life. About 600 million of that, 55%, flows back to growers. Most carbon programs return 10 to 30% to the farmer. This one is 55. That is unusually high. Now I owe you the honest version. The 1.1 billion is a 9-year forward contract value. It is not assets currently tokenized. The first credit was issued from a single Minnesota farm. The 2026 expansion target is 1.5 to 2 million acres in North Dakota and western Minnesota. So it is real. It is growing. But we should not pretend it is already at 41 million tons. The cost geometry is what makes a 6-person team possible. Minting a land NFT on Hedera cost about $1. A transaction is under a cent. On Ethereum, at the time DOVU migrated, the same operations cost $80 to $100 in gas. That is what allows per acre, per farmer accounting at this scale. So here is the honest distinction we owe the viewer. Hedera Guardian solves process integrity, double counting, retirement provenance, registry opacity, post hoc methodology backdating. Those problems collapse the moment your audit trail lives on a public ledger no one can edit. That is real. The floor is going up. What it does not solve is methodology integrity. Whether the underlying carbon was actually sequestered, additionality, leakage, permanence. If the methodology says you saved 100 tons of CO2, but your forest was never going to be cut down anyway, Hedera will faithfully tokenize and retire 100 tons of nothing. Tamper-proof garbage is still garbage. We have to say that out loud. Why DOVU's pick of Hedera matters here is because BCarbon version 2.0 stratified soil sampling is the real-world science layer. The on-chain serialization is the audit layer. They are stacked on purpose. The sampling answers the methodology question. The chain answers the registry question. Now look at the ecosystem actually being built. most of which is invisible to crypto Twitter. Verra digitizing 20 methodologies. BCarbon migrating 2 million credits. ServiceNow ESG public ledger live. Zimbabwe running sovereign carbon. Virginia running wetland mitigation banking. Totem Earth closing its first Fortune 500 deal. EcoGuard signing for 347 million coconut trees in the Philippines. In the contrarian honesty, DOVU is 6 people in Wales. The token is not the story. The forward 1.1 billion is forward. So Verra and B0 have not rated DOVU credits as a class yet. No Fortune 500 has publicly disclosed buying DOVU credits. The infrastructure is real. The retail attention is not. That is the gap. Look, the easiest way to get this story wrong is to make it about a token. It is not. It is about whether the rails for a $35 billion carbon market move from editable spreadsheets onto a public ledger. Hedera and DOVU do not fix carbon credits on their own. They fix the lie about who issued, traded, and retired them. The credit itself still has to be real, and that is a methodology fight, not a blockchain fight. So if you want to know whether the public DLT carbon thesis works, do not watch the price, watch the registries. If this gave you a new perspective on Hedera and DOVU, smash subscribe. Drop a comment. Do you trust on-chain MRV more than the registry it is replacing? Notion link in the description has every source, every quote, every receipt. See you in the next one.